I doubt what's going to play because he can't even go to the draft. If the LSU team that shows up in the opening week of the year when people are Miami, that team shows up, LSU wins the game easily. The LSU team that showed up with Jordan Hare as a big underdog, that LSU team shows up, LSU wins the game. The LSU team that showed up against Georgia, that team shows up, LSU wins the game. It's a mismatch in the trenches with these two teams. Mm-hmm. So I am banking on LSU, Ed Orgeron, that team emotionally showing up, not wanting to be the next SEC team to lose to UCF and just kind of be laughed at. You lost to UCF too. How cute. So, nothing. If Mackenzie Milton were playing, I think I'd probably feel a little bit differently. But I don't think Mac is as much of a threat in the passing game as Milton was. Maybe I could be wrong. I mean, he's certainly a good runner, and he certainly proved that in the comeback against Memphis. But gosh, if D'Angelo Williams was able to gut them for what he did in the first half, I would think that LSU running game and that power game and that offensive line would probably have a field day of their own. And LSU's defense, obviously, much better than anything they faced against Memphis. So we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, did Gus Malzahn care that he lost? Or was he smiling at me like, haha, now Bama's got a controversy? I don't know. And I think you're right about Orgeron. He cares. I don't know if the kids are going to care as much, you know, being that stepchild to Alabama. And that's just my crazy theory. But I agree with you about this line. It says -7.5. They're begging you to take UCF, which means you should definitely be taking LSU here. If LSU runs the ball, and that's all they do against UCF, allowing 4.8 yards per rush on defense in the American Athletic Conference, they shouldn't even throw the ball. You know, and I've won on LSU bowl games because of that. But I'll tell you right now, if there's anything true to conspiracy theories that are crazy, and you see LSU, and if I see LSU lose this game, I will re-question what I said about their thoughts.
And again, I hate to go back to what I said about the Texas Georgia game. Live bet. You'll know early if LSU was emotionally involved. Mm-hmm. If they're not, it's a great opportunity to play UCF.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you there. Let's see where this thing ends up. Well, let's move on. We have a few minutes left. Let's get in the Cotton Bowl here for Arlington, Texas. Clemson versus Notre Dame. Notre Dame, wow, getting 13 points. We haven't seen that in a while. Over under is 55, my man. What's your thoughts on this one?
I misread this line a little bit. I thought when it opened, it would fall and stay. However, it fell a click from I think it got to 10.5 maybe briefly, and now it's back up to 13. Which, look, Notre Dame belongs in the playoff. Done everything they can. They've won all their games, and they don't have to apologize for how they got there or who they beat or anything. But Clemson is finally being priced, and deservedly so, like Alabama. Since Trevor Lawrence has come back, Clemson has won by 60, 34, 49, 61, 20, 29, 21, and 32. They've shown that they can win games in an ugly defensive type manner, like the game at BC. They've shown they can win games that they haven't necessarily been at their best in high scoring games and allowing a lot of yards through the air, like South Carolina, and every other way in between. I get anyone who was on Notre Dame in this game. I get the logic. I think Notre Dame with Book and Claypool and Boykin and those guys can have some success through the air. Both teams have just 2 wins over teams that are totally ranked. But I really am curious to see how this Notre Dame secondary, this Notre Dame defense, which has allowed just 7 touchdowns all year through the air, how they match up with that 4-headed monster of Clemson at wide receiver. Higgins and Ross and Rodgers and, of course, Renfro just finding spots to just settle and wide open and all game long. And then you got to worry about ETN. The passing offenses that Notre Dame has faced have not been good. They faced one team in the top 35 nationally in passing EPA, and that's Stanford. And that was early in the year when Stanford was kind of still in between, figuring out, are we still a run team, are we a pass team, or what? That's it. And this is in Clemson, since Lawrence came back from that injury, they're ninth in that ranking. So this is a completely different animal for Notre Dame. I know people, and look, my initial reaction too was, yeah, this Notre Dame team is better, and they are more prepared than what we saw from that 2012 team. And it is a different team. But if you look at a lot of the numbers in terms of like power ratings and offensive and defensive efficiency metrics and where they were entering the 2012 title game against Alabama, they're a lot more similar than you'd want to believe. So I have my concerns. Selfishly, as someone who's going to be watching these games and from a company standpoint of wanting the rating to be great and through the roof, I'd love to see a close game, but I worry that Clemson is a lot better than Notre Dame.
I worry that too. The spread definitely tells you that. I look at Notre Dame as the ACC team that didn't have to play Clemson or NC State. For that fact, the both teams have very similar schedules. If you look on Sagarin, I think they're both ranked like within a couple points of each other. Clemson leads the league in second half points. From a power ratings perspective, I actually do have Clemson by 12, right around that number, right? From an algorithm perspective, I have Clemson by 6 or 7, but I'm not going by that. Clemson is a little weaker against the pass, as we saw against Texas A&M, Syracuse, and NC State. I think NC State put up 35 points, but they gave up 50-something, 60, whatever it was. I think Notre Dame definitely made the right choice with Ian Book, and I think everyone agrees with that at the helm. The kid's been amazing. What was he doing on the bench, right, before the season started? I think I'm going to bet this game like I bet the Penn State-Ohio State games. And here's kind of the angle on it. When you're an inferior team and you're stepping up in class, they have to know this. I mean, everyone knows the spreads. You scheme. You change some things. You surprise, right? You do it in the beginning. You have some stuff that kind of shocks the other team. And when you're the much better team, what do you do before you go into the games? Well, you don't do anything different. You come in full force, what's worked for you before, because if you do anything different, you can screw up the whole game and lose it. So that's why I think I'm going to take Notre Dame in the first half. I think they surprise Clemson a little bit with Kelly's going to have some scheming happening. And then right at the halftime, I'm going to bet Clemson for a second half. I think that's how this game goes. The defenses are a little tighter in the first half anyway. It's been very successful for me when I bet Penn State versus Ohio State. I think that's the only way to bet this game. Moving on to the last game here, we have the Orange Bowl in Miami, Florida. Alabama versus Oklahoma. Oklahoma getting 14 points, over under all the way up to 79.5. Kyler Murray, the Heisman winner. Tua was in second. Man, what a game we're going to have on this for this Orange Bowl. What are your thoughts on it, bud?
I don't know why Alabama's even showing up for this one. I mean, Oklahoma's got the Heisman Trophy winner. They've got the Joe Moore Award winner, the entire offensive line. They got the hottest coaching name out there in Lincoln Riley. Why should poor old Alabama and Nick Saban and all those national titles and Tua even travel down to Miami and play in this game?
No credit, my man. They got no credit.
And look, sarcasm aside, kidding aside, if you don't think that factors in, you're crazy. You don't know Scott Cochran, the Alabama strength coach, very well. If you don't think he's going to be using this and probably reminded his defense every single day of Kyler Murray with the Heisman Trophy, Oklahoma's offensive line, baddest man in the country up front. If you don't think that Alabama is going to come out just breathing fire and just smoke coming out of their ears, you're crazy. And on the field, statistically, it is a mismatch, offense versus defense. The two offenses are very, very similar. I think that's what people don't understand with the rate stats. I mean, especially when you're talking Big 12 teams, you don't want to use points per game, yards per game. You want to use the per possession, per play numbers because those are a truer indication of offensive ability. Like Alabama and Oklahoma are like 1-2 in terms of points per possession. Mm-hmm. If you look at points allowed per possession, Alabama allows 1.1 per possession, which is third in the country. Oklahoma allows 2.65, more than double. That's 113th. There are 130 teams in the country, and they are 113th in points per possession. If Kansas can put up 40 on this team, I'm worried what Alabama can put up. I don't know how many stops they get. I don't want to speculate on injuries, and I don't want to be the Twitter doctor, but as of the time that we're posting this and recording it, we don't know about the status of Marquise Brown. From looking at him when he got carted off in the Big 12 championship game, tears running down his face, he had the look of a guy who knew he had suffered a pretty serious injury. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm reading too much into that, and I hope he goes out and plays in the Orange Bowl and has a great game, but I wouldn't bank on it. I don't know anything. I haven't heard anything. But if he can't play, that is a massive loss for Oklahoma. Massive. I know Oklahoma beat them as a big dog in the Sugar Bowl when Alabama got stunned by the kick six, and their season essentially ended there when they thought they were going to head back to the national title game. But I don't know, man. I don't know how Oklahoma gets enough stops in this game.
Man, that Marquise Brown injury is huge. I'm glad you brought that up. Like you said, man, if you look at yards per point, it takes teams 20 yards to score a point against Bama. It takes them only 13 yards to score a point against Oklahoma. So just like you said, points per possession. Great point there. Oklahoma, if you did look at the yards per play and the points per game, they rank at 95th. In points allowed out of 130 teams, 32.5, 102 in yards per play at 6. Bama's top 7 in both categories. And both their offenses are 1 and 2, right? And Alabama's in a much harder division. I think a big factor could be how tight this game will be called by the officials. That always factors in, but there's going to be a ton of throwing here, especially from Oklahoma's side. What I think is going to happen, and like you said, Alabama's probably pissed about this Kyler Murray getting the Heisman and things like that. I think Saban is going to look at the Oklahoma Army game a little bit, just a little bit here, right? I think he can play keep away pretty easy with Harris and all his running backs there. I don't see why they shouldn't just try to control the possession of this game. I'll tell you this, if Bama's up 24-10 by halftime, that under 79 is going to happen. That's going to happen because they are going to run the ball, go slow, and run the clock because Nick Saban's that smart of a coach. I prefer the under 79.5, especially if Bama is leading at halftime. Do you have a side on this one?
I actually, in my write-up on ESPN Chalk, I predicted Alabama 49, Oklahoma 31. So that is Alabama and pretty right around the total, which I think at one point it did touch 80. I don't know what it is now.
It did,
but so I'm kind of seeing it right around that way. In looking at this, I wonder. Again, this is so many. You don't know what's out there right now. So many different ways to play this and bet this. Again, Alabama team total over could be potentially come game day. What the best way to bet this game is. If you don't want to lay 14, 13.5, 14, 14.5, whatever it is, you know Alabama's going to get theirs. Just play the. I mean, what would you think with Alabama being a 2-touchdown favorite, and total around 80? You're probably expecting that they're expecting about a 48-34 type game?